because what we're seeing right now is everybody running from DEI. Even Democratic candidates are running from it, and yet this is still up on the Navy website. Does this scare you?
Greg, I will talk about that, but can we talk about your glasses first?
Yes.
Because you look like a middle-aged lesbian poet. Which actually might be DEI for Fox, because
yes.
That's Dave Rubin killing it on Gutfeld exclamation point on Friday's Fox News program, Gutfeld with Greg Gutfeld. It's January 17th, 2024. I'm Dave Rubin. We're live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals. Share, subscribe, tap that notification bell. And if I'm not mistaken, there is an issue with Locals right now. We're having a little Locals issue. If you normally watch on Locals, you're probably watching on Rumble right now. So take an extra moment and tap that subscribe button. Would you do that for me? Okay, guys, obviously there is something major to talk about. Then we'll dive into a normal show and everything else. But Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the presidential race. This thing is Trump's to lose at this point. Nikki's hanging around. There's the Gov, who is now back in Tallahassee, and we will continue to strengthen the free state of Florida. I just want to say first, now, it's not that this was such a surprise over the weekend, right? Like Trump was basically the presumptive nominee last week. The entire DeSantis strategy really was go hard, 99 counties in Iowa, see if you can win there or at least get a close second, so you shift the narrative a little bit from Trump being unstoppable. He ends up getting about 20%, doesn't work out, despite the fact that the amount of people who showed up at the Iowa caucuses was extremely depressed. About 100,000 people voted. So everything is sort of being painted within the parameters of 100,000 people voting, 50,000 voting for Trump. That gets Vivek to drop out. Now DeSantis drops out. Nikki's really the last one. Obviously, Christie and a couple others had dropped out even before that. I just want to say, first off, that it is always, this is relative to Ron DeSantis and everything else, and everything else in life, I would say, it is always worth fighting the good fight. You will not always win. Donald Trump does not always win. He lost the last presidential election. When I was in California, I fought very hard for the recall of Gavin Newsom. That did not work, right? I campaigned with Larry Elder. It was worth doing. I think fighting for good people and fighting for the right ideas are always worth doing. And it's not just about if you get the political win or not. I will also say something that I repeated on the show, I think, several times over the last year or so, even before DeSantis had officially announced that he was running, that as a Floridian, one of my concerns was, we're going to send our best guy who's basically done everything right in this state that is a sanctuary for freedom lovers in America. We're going to send our best guy out into the chaos of the crazy machine that destroys everybody, whether we're talking about the swamp or whether we're talking about going against Donald Trump. And would he come back irreparably wounded if he doesn't win? Now, I don't think so. I think he's going to be just fine, and the continued wins of Florida will just go like dominoes. So in a weird way, when he announced this over the weekend, I was kind of relieved. I was like, all right, it didn't look like it was going to happen. But we were still sort of neither here nor there last week after the Iowa loss and before he had announced anything. And I'm like, oh, well, we got our best guy back right now. So as a Floridian, I want to say that. But my buddy Dave Raboy, who's been on the show many times, he's an author, national security expert. He had a really nice tweet about this. Dave's been living in Florida for, I think, about 15 years or so. He wrote this. He wrote, "Of course I'm disappointed. But at the end of the day, I live in the greatest state, bar none, Ron DeSantis' Florida. And there's no close second. Florida was never my idea of a paradise or a refuge. While it was governed by middle-of-the-road Chamber of Commerce Republicans like Jeb Bush, Dade and Broward County and Palm Beach had the politics of a tropical Jersey. In 2018, there was absolutely no reason for Florida to become the vanguard of right-wing governance. But it was Ron DeSantis who won that election, and he changed everything. So much of my life here, from freedom during COVID, the amazing energy, dynamism, and optimism across the whole state, to my wonderful friends who've moved here, is owed in large part to the best, most based elected official of the last 50 years. Cataloging everything he accomplished in only 6 years reads like a dream for the American right. DeSantis made his mark on every issue we said we cared about. We were amazed at how he never folded against the left and turned around and kept scoring base victories. He left the Democrat Party of Florida like roadkill on the turnpike. He has been a leader far better than we deserve, it seems, because he took seriously the things the right always claimed that it wanted. For that, he will always have my support in any capacity. Thank you, Governor. I'd like to say thank you, Dave Raboy, because you just made my job very easy, because you summed up all my feelings, and I just had to read a tweet by you. So yes, Florida will remain strong. We will see what Ron DeSantis' future is beyond Florida, potentially, if he ever wanted to run again or be involved in the administration or anything else. But look, you can either bend the world to your will, or you can see the world as it is. I voted for Trump last time. I was out there heavily supporting the guy. Then I thought that there was a better choice. I thought there was a younger version of him with all of the good stuff and none of the baggage. Then all these court cases came and all the rest of it. And clearly, at least the people of Iowa and the way our political system works, it's not heading in the direction that I thought it was. And that's actually just fine. So as I said all along, if Trump is the nominee, I'm going to vote for him. And here we are. So it's all good. But now let me connect that to what I want to do with the show today. Because one of the things that I think I'll probably struggle with a little bit over the next year or so, or at least for the 10 months of this campaign, is that you know how often I talk about truth on this show, how often I show clips of Jordan Peterson talking about truth, and how often I've said that, you know, the easy thing about supporting DeSantis was it's so rare that there's a politician that tells truth, so you don't have to contort yourself to constantly just agree with or back or promote everything he says, because you're like, oh, it's true, it's simple, it's good, that's it. And by the way, I think that's one of the things that he suffered from as a candidate, just kind of being good, right? I called it the Tim Duncan syndrome, or it's the Tony Gwynn syndrome. I think that's what Steve Deace called it. If you're consistently batting .350, people aren't excited when you get another base hit. Tim Duncan, you win another MVP, another finals MVP, 5-time champ. Nobody cares anymore, right? And I think DeSantis suffered from a bit of that. But I think one of the things that's going to be a through line on this show for the next year is that I don't want to go into this just worshiping and ignoring the lies and everything else, but clearly Trump is a zillion times better than anything that the Democrats are putting out there. And the fact that Joe Biden has dementia and they've ushered in all of the wokeism and we have no border and anything else. So I am going to constantly be pushing and promoting the people that are telling the truth, that are fighting the bullshit narratives and everything else. And occasionally that's going to come with having to, shed a little light on some of Trump's nonsense too. And that gets me to where I want to start culturally for today. That was a long ass intro, but I think you will see it will be worthwhile. One of the big cultural touchstones that we have in this country right now is the UFC. I am not a huge UFC fighting guy, and some of you are not either, but I do show these clips because millions of people in this country are paying attention to what is happening in the UFC and how it's become sort of politicized and associated with Trump. So when you're surprised, or if you were surprised, that Trump is now the presumptive nominee, basically, unless Nikki pulls off like the Hail Mary of all time, it's partly because of what is happening culturally. That's why I'm always more interested in talking about culture, which is downstream. Politics is downstream from culture, as Andrew Breitbart said. I'm always more interested in that than just like, oh, what happened politically today? And let's fight about all that. Anyway, the UFC had a huge fight this weekend. It was the middleweight championship, and it was up in Canada. And Joe Rogan was doing a live stream of this thing. So it was a simulcast where they're watching the fight and you're watching Joe with a couple of his guests. And there was a massive chant in the audience in Canada, F Trudeau. And I think this is indicative of largely what is happening right now and what is driving the movement behind Trump. Let's take a look.
Trudeau.
I was at the UFC.
Yelling Trudeau.
Love it.
Yeah.
That guy's
Canada.
a piece of shit.
Get your together. Come back. Come back to what you used to be. That Pierre Poilievre guy, however you say his name. That guy makes sense.
He's also Fidel Castro's kid. We know. I'm not a big conspiracy guy.
I don't know if that's true.
Come on, Eddie, back me up on this. Educate him.
It's not that crazy. It's not that crazy.
All right. Again, you may not care that much about UFC. Again, I say it's not really my thing, but I'm trying to show you when you watch newscasts and they miss all of the culture stuff, and then you wonder, how did Trump return? It's because of things like this. It's interesting, by the way, Joe Rogan, who again, I don't even think voted in the last election, and by no means is a classic conservative. He says, I like Pierre Poilievre. He is the Conservative Party leader in Canada right now. But the fact that thousands of people are showing up to a UFC fight to say F the Prime Minister of Canada, the guy who shut down the truckers and the bank accounts and all of that, and was one of the worst sort of COVID authoritarians in the entire world, it shows you that the people have just sort of had it with the elitists and the globalists and the machine. Here's a bit more of the crowd chanting F Trudeau. Now, I want to connect this to something that I think is more largely happening in the country. Like, why is it happening? Why are these people showing up to a fight to scream F the Prime Minister? Well, there was a specific reason for it in this case. Over the weekend, there was a press conference for this fight, and UFC middleweight champ, his name is Sean Strickland, he got into it with a reporter, a woke reporter, of course, trying to get him on some past comments. And I want you to watch how it doesn't even matter if you completely agree with him or not, or agree with the reporter or not. I want you to watch how he fights back on the woke reporter and then think, does that remind you of a certain orange man who's suddenly surging?
We've got a pretty supportive gay and lesbian community in this city. I did want to ask you about something you wrote a couple of years ago. You said, if I had a gay son, I would think I'd...
Oh, look, another, I'm saying to you, the swamp, you guys, the swamp.
You become a champion, you become a star, and some would say...
Let me ask you something. Are you gay?
Have you had the chance to interact with a more diverse...
Let me know, are you gay?
Could I get an answer?
Well, no, I'm asking, this is a part of, are you a gay man?
I'm an ally of the community.
Okay. If you had a son and he was like, you had a son, he was gay, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want a grandkid?
No problem with it.
Oh man, well, dude, you're a weak man, dude. You're part of the problem. You elected Justin Trudeau. Like, when he sees the bank accounts, like you're just pathetic. And the fact that you have no backbone, and has he shut down your country and seized bank accounts? You ask me some stupid like that, go yourself. Move the on, man.
Really, answer the question.
He's well spoken, I'll give him that much. Okay, it doesn't even matter if you agree with all of the specifics, and I could get into some of the nuance there. That's not really the point. The broader point is that this guy is going after the media in a very Trumpian way, and that led to me, when he's talking about what Trudeau did with the truckers and everything else, he's basically saying it's people like you that led to this effed up situation in this country, and then thousands of people start chanting F Trudeau. It's like there's a connection there. There's a connection between how those things are happening, and there's also a connection that finally a whole bunch of us, and it doesn't mean that I agree with everything that this Strickland guy says or I agree with everything that Trump says, but enough of us are just like, enough. F you people, not just F Trudeau. F all of you people who have guilted us and gone after us and tried to shut down our bank accounts and everything else. So the problem, of course, with the woke is that they are so fixated on these faux social issues that they actually ignore real tyranny when it comes from the real tyrants. But I want to show you, we'll get into that in just a sec. I want to show you a bit more from that press conference with Strickland, because he's also not having it with Bud Light and the trans thing.
But I did want to ask also things you said about the trans community. You said this past October when they announced the Bud Light sponsorship that you'd go so hard on Bud Light in your next fight, they'll have to accept me or denounce me when they know what, and will know what they stand for.
This guy's like, nah, this Canadian's not that Canadian.
Are you still going to use your fight time to kind of speak on that?
Here's the thing about Bud Light. 10 years ago, to be trans was a mental illness. And now all of a sudden, people like you have weaseled your way into the world. You are an infection. You are the definition of weakness. Everything that is wrong with the world is because of you. And the best thing is the world's not buying it. The world's not buying your bull you're peddling. The world is not saying, you know what, you're right. Chicks have dicks. The world's not saying that. The world's saying, no, there are two genders. I don't want my kids being taught about, who they could in school. I don't want my kids being taught about, their sexual preference. Like, dude, this guy is the enemy. You want to look at the enemy to our world? It's that motherfucker right there, asking these stupid questions.
Okay, again, you don't have to agree with exactly how he's saying it or anything else. But he is like directionally right. And also, again, it illustrates the broader point of enough people have had enough of this. And you know, when I talk about how I don't watch the NBA anymore because everything's been so politicized, it's like, do you think that this guy, when he was training to be a great fighter for years and years and years, thought that, oh, mostly when he would be giving press conferences before the biggest fight of his life, he'd be talking about whether girls are boys and boys are girls and everything else. So wokeism has infected literally everything in society, from the military down to the UFC and everything in between. And now people have had enough. And again, I would connect that exactly to the rocket fuel that is behind Trump right now, right? That is the rocket fuel that made a lot of people say, okay, because nobody hated DeSantis, but people are like, all right, DeSantis, he's good, he's fine, he's fighting the right fights, but Trump is the guy that they associate with this thing. I want to show you one more from Strickland, because he doesn't hate the gays. The language is a little whatever, but he doesn't really hate the gays. He just doesn't want this crap taught in schools, which 10 years ago would have been the position of every sane human being on this great planet.
I'm trying to be good, man. I'm trying to be good. I like the gays. Here's the thing. I've never, you guys think I've ever on a gay man or on a gay woman? I like the gays. It's freedom. We still have it in America. We'll teach you about it. You guys don't have freedom of speech. I'm surprised what I'm saying is probably I'm probably gonna get the Canadian government to arrest me. So I don't give a who you I don't give a what you want to do in life. But don't tell kids about it. Don't teach that at school. Don't push your agenda. Don't try to brainwash people. Don't try to go past parents. Don't try to go past all this and brainwash people, you cuck.
Yeah, that's all true. Like, that is all true. Almost everyone now, not everybody, but most people, especially if you're of a certain age, like if you're under, say, 55, nobody really cares about anyone's sexuality anymore, and people want to live and let live. It's just a thing, especially if you're in the Gen X situation. Like, we had done it. It was all good. It wasn't cool to be racist. It wasn't cool to hate gays or anything else. Then they decided to push all of this in the schools relentlessly. Tell you that if you didn't want your kid learning about sex when they were in 4th grade, that you're a bigot and you're a racist. If you get it, you get all of the stuff. And the reason I'm showing you the Strickland thing again is because it's interesting. The messaging there, everything he just said, are all the policies that DeSantis pushed forth in Florida and was told he was a horrible person for. And they are the exact same things that are now the rocket fuel for Donald Trump. And I think it is worth noting, because if you only view the world by turning on the news and what happened politically today, you will always be about 6 months to a year behind what is going on in the real world, because that's real world stuff. And then that downstream from culture thing gets you the political version of all this. One more on the UFC. Here is UFC President Dana White defending Strickland's right to just say what he thinks.
You obviously give a long leash to your fighters about, what they can say when they are up there with a UFC microphone, and you are getting into territory of homophobia, transphobia. Like, is there...
I don't give anybody a leash.
Well, I'm saying you...
A leash?
like...
Free speech. I control what people say. Gonna tell people what to believe. Gonna tell people... I don't tell any other human being what to say, what to think, and there's no leashes on any of them. What is your question?
I was asking that question. I'll move on, though.
Yeah, probably a good idea. That's ridiculous to say I give somebody a leash. Free speech, brother. People can say whatever they want, and they can believe whatever they want.
All right, so that is the position of Dana White, who is the president of the UFC. It's not his job to police all of his guys. Now, interestingly, I think you could make a slightly counter argument on that, in that these guys represent his organization, and he is allowed, if they were up there saying, we want to murder all these people, like, obviously he would have some issue with that. But the overriding driving force of what he's saying, of course, is not only completely right, but it's what we've always wanted. No, it's not what we've always wanted. It's the way we always kind of did it. before this woke thing infected absolutely everything. What's really amazing about this is that Strickland, he's going after Bud Light. Bud Light is now one of the biggest sponsors of UFC. They gave Dana White a ton of money, and suddenly Dana White is now promoting Bud Light again. So nobody's perfect in any of all this, but I will certainly give Dana White credit right there for being like, oh, one of my guys is going after my major sponsor, and I'm going to defend his right to do it. Isn't that seriously something? So every single one of you watching this, you know what Sean Strickland is talking about. Again, the colorful language, whether he parsed every word perfectly or not, the reaction that he is having, because you people have pushed all of this on everybody else. Well, now it's a whole bunch of us that don't even make sense as a group politically, all pushing back. You are giving us the biggest political movement in the history of the world right now because you people cannot stop. And you also know that this is not just happening in the UFC, it's also happening across mainstream media. We're going to show you some clips from MSNBC that are going to knock your socks off, or your wig in this case, because I don't think Joy Reid really has blonde hair. We'll get to that in just a second. Let me talk to you guys about Truly Office. Guys, this might sound unbelievable, but the quickest way to secure your personal data is to ditch mainstream office software providers like Microsoft and Google who misuse your data without your permission, and switch to a safer alternative like Truly Office software. Once you switch, you'll never look back, because Truly Office software gives you peace of mind and control over your personal data. Truly Office software is secure, private alternative to mainstream office software. It doesn't track or sell your data, giving you complete control over your personal information. And getting started is easy. Right now, they're offering a free trial of Truly Office software just for our viewers and listeners. So you can try it before you buy. Just go to trulyoffice.com/rumble to start your journey towards data privacy and security. Before you commit to another office software that invades your privacy, consider Truly Office software. It's the secure private alternative you've been looking for. Go to trulyoffice.com/rumble right now and try it for free. This offer is limited, so don't miss out. Okay, so now I want to connect this to more widely what's going on in the culture war and what is also happening politically. Because again, these things are deeply, deeply connected. And if you just ignore the culture part, you are always going to be in slow motion mode, right? What do I always say? Truth is a time release pill these days, right? Everything seems to be just, we all kind of find out about things slow, but if you're paying attention, that you can actually lock in with the truth and know what's going on. So Tiffany Justice, she is the co-founder of Moms for Liberty. I know Tiffany, I've seen her at many events. I think I've done their podcast at least once or twice over the years. She is an absolutely lovely woman who I think was mostly apolitical throughout her life. And then as they were pushing all of this gender nonsense and trans stuff and all of this stuff on her kids, and then her friends' kids and everything else, she started a group called Moms for Liberty. They're one of the groups that started looking into some of the books that kids were learning, that kids were supposed to read. They started looking into the curriculum that they were being taught, et cetera, et cetera. She is by no honest assessment an extremist or a right-wing maniac or anything else, but of course that's what the media calls her. Anyway, she went on the televised mental institution known as MSNBC to talk to Joy Reid, and Joy tried to explain to her why children learning about pedophilia should be in public schools.
The question I'm asking is, what is the expertise that you have and other Moms for Liberty advocates have to decide that a book, an award-winning book like All Boys Aren't Blue, isn't appropriate for students to read? What is your expertise?
What a tragic story of a young man who's anally raped by his adult family member. So you have incest, rape, pedophilia. Joy, you said you'd let me answer, so I'm going to answer
Please
for you. In what context is a strap-on dildo acceptable for public school? That's my question to you. Tell me what the context around the strap-on dildo or the rape of a minor child by a teacher.
Hold on a second.
No,
wait,
we're talking about public school.
One moment.
All right.
So now you've asked me questions.
Sure.
So I'm going to answer it.
Okay.
Well, who is the main character? What's the name of the main character in All Boys Aren't Blue?
You're asking me right now.
You just gave me very specific information about this book, so you're presenting yourself as somebody expert.
It's the gentleman.
Hold on. Who's the main character in the book?
The main character is the author.
What's his name?
George, I believe, is his first name.
Because you're giving me very specific information that is.
You're asking me to remember the name of an author.
You
the
just
name
remembered
of the author
very specific
doesn't
names.
Joy.
Here's my question.
We're talking about
Here's my question.
You didn't answer my question.
No. I'm going to answer your question.
Great. I would love to hear that.
Absolutely. Well, I'm interviewing you, and you're not interviewing me. So let's just make sure it's a conversation. Okay.
Great.
Okay, Joy is just so absolutely unbearable that she tries to pin this down on you don't know the name of the main character. She knows that it's George. She knows that it's an that it's biographical, et cetera, et cetera. it's such nonsense. And she knows what the story is about, but that's just like a little trick that if you're a really dishonest host, you can use on somebody. Like if I'm interviewing somebody and they kind of don't know what they're doing, there's always a way you can really just get them on some BS. And that's exactly what Joy Reid did. I think even for the dumb brainlets that are watching MSNBC, they probably could see through that. First, I want to just say that someone has to decide what's in curriculum. So when Joy's like, well, this is an award-winning book, and why should no kid is taught the sum totality of all information every year of their life, right? Every year, there are educators and parents and board members that get together to decide what is appropriate for these children. Just if you're watching this, just think back to when you were in 3rd, 4th grade, right? Think about your teacher. I'll think my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Kachenauer, absolutely loved her. She read us The Secret Garden and she did all the voices. I just absolutely adored this woman. I thought she was like 160 years old. She was probably like 65 or something, but that's part of growing up. But imagine if she was, instead of reading The Secret Garden to us, if she was reading this book about anal rape and dildos and incest and everything else, that probably wouldn't have been right. It's not to say those things don't exist, because they do, but they are appropriate at some point. And when that point should be is subjective. And that's why parents ultimately should be the deciders of what their children are learning. And by the way, we all know this, which is why the homeschooling movement and the pod movement and school choice is exploding right now, because everyone's realizing, boy, for generations now, we've been sending these kids to learn about a whole bunch of weird shit. And now a bunch of kids have anxiety. They're all on drugs, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it continued with Joy Reid, but Tiffany did a fine job here.
I'm saying to you is that as you are not an expert in this book,
I don't have to be an expert to know that dildos aren't appropriate for public school. I mean, come on, let's get real.
This is a full context story, as you said, of the author's experience. Why is it your right, or a Moms for Liberty activist's right, to say that a parent who wants their child to have access to this book, which gives a personal experience of this author, why doesn't a liberal parent, for instance, or a parent of an LGBTQ kid, why don't they have a right for their child to just have access to this book? Why is it your right to say they can't?
So again, we're talking about incest, rape, and pedophilia.
And each parent, each parent has to decide what is appropriate for their child to read. So I want you to answer. I'm going to ask it one more time.
Right.
What is your right to tell a parent who wants their child, who might feel seen by this story? Why don't they have the right? Why don't they have the right as a parent to say, my child can have access to this book?
If a child feels seen by this story, that means that they have been the victim of a predator. That means that they have either been raped by a family member, they've experienced
and your proof of that is what?
You just said that
What's
if a child feels seen by this story.
You're now making assumptions about it.
No, but if a child has been raped, we should do a lot better than put a book on the library
Now you're literally
shelf.
creating a story behind a child that you don't know. Let me show you a form.
Can't say all the things. Can't say them. Nobody's going to make any money around here if I say them, so let me try to do it nicer. First off, when Joy keeps saying, are you an expert in this book? Do you think that would give you the right to criticize the book? Do you think the teachers who are teaching this book or any other book are experts in this book? No, they're elementary school teachers in public schools. They're not necessarily the best and the brightest. That's number one. Number two, Joy, if you really want, when she talks about the parents of the LGBTQ and the liberal parents, if they really want their child, their 4th grader, to learn about anal rape and all of this other stuff, then give them that book at home. And then guess what? Tiffany and Moms for Liberty might question the ethics or the morality of that parent, but at that point, it's not their right to do anything. When we're talking about a public school, every parent gets on the board, right? Like the parents can be as involved as they want. Most parents, obviously, over the last 2 or 3 decades, have not been involved enough, so people like Joy Reid were able to infect all of these things. But when Joy Reid's like, what are you saying? Everything should be taught? Like, it just doesn't even make any sense. James Lindsay, who is one of the absolute best at really distilling down what this woke movement really is. He's been on the show many times, James Lindsay. He wrote this, so he retweeted the clip that we just showed you. He wrote, anyone who will lie to you the way Joy Reid lies to Tiffany Justice here will kill you the second they have clearance and need to do so. What he's really connecting that to, although it sort of sounds over the top that Joy Reid would kill someone like that. But what do Marxist movements do? How many people have died in the name of communism, right? Because the individual is the antithesis to the communist system. So if you want some autonomy over your life, if you want some autonomy over your children's life, you have to be eliminated. So I don't think James means that, even though it sounds a little over the top. I don't think he means it sarcastically. That if these people had the power to take out the rest of us, because we're right, what are we? We're the bigots, we're the racists, we're the homophobes, we're the transphobes. You could be black, but if you don't believe in that shit, you're the bad guy. You're gay, but you don't believe that, you're the bad guy. So so what Joy Reid is doing right there is just like the Canadian reporter that we talked about earlier in that Strickland clip. They're passionate about these woke social issues, but they will gladly use the most authoritarian tendencies to shut people down. So they're tolerant and woke and diverse, but they'll also shut down your bank. They'll also make sure that you can't protest. They'll also force you to be injected with things or make sure you don't have a job, because it is all faux tolerance and diversity. And now more and more people are stepping up against it. Anyway, one more from MSNBC, because Ali Velshi joined Joy Reid to dissect what just happened there. And well, here's this.
So this idea that these books are just pushed back because people don't want this idea of learning other people's stories to be out there. It's disingenuous to call it all about sex. Kids know all about sex. Kids have always known all about sex. In fact, if there's anything to do, it's to do a better job ensuring that kids get proper sex education. That's because right. the correlation is direct. If kids get proper sex education, they have safer sex lives. They don't get pregnant as early. Yeah. Things like that happen.
It's not your right to tell anyone when their children should learn about sex, right? It's up to the parents. You know, on a personal note here, yeah, you got most of you watching this know this. I'm gay. We have kids, right? This has nothing to do with being gay, and this has nothing to do with. It has everything to do with parenting. It has nothing to do with sexuality in a weird sense, right? Like, I wouldn't want my kids going to a school and learning about sex or sexuality or anything else before they've learned about it from me, right? Like that is just such an obvious truth. But these people want to corrupt the minds of young people. That's not because being gay is bad. That's not the truth. They want to corrupt the minds of young people so that they can basically get them to believe anything else they want them to believe. What right does Ali Velshi have to decide when Tiffany Justice's child should learn about sex or gender or sexuality or anything else? If Joy Reid, again, really wants her child to learn the story of anal rape, then read that to your own child. It's about parental rights, but they want to remove all of the individuals from the system, and you will bow to us. Now I want to shift this to something we talked a bit about last week, because the World Economic Forum had their yearly conference of lunacy. And wait, are we doing that right now? Yeah, we're going to do an ad. And then we'll talk about the World Economic Conference of Lunacy. Let's talk about Tax Network USA. Guys, are you struggling with your back taxes or unified returns? The IRS is escalating collections, adding 20,000 new agents and sending over 5 million collection letters to kick off 2024. In these challenging times, your best defense is Tax Network USA. Don't let the IRS take advantage of you. With over 14 years of experience, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in back taxes. No matter the size of your tax issue, their expertise is your advantage. They specialize in negotiating with the IRS, aiming to significantly reduce your debt. Tax Network USA doesn't just negotiate, they also protect your assets from IRS seizures and manage your yearly returns for ongoing compliance. Importantly, they are licensed to help with all state tax issues, regardless of where you live in the U.S. The clock's ticking. Don't wait as the IRS steps up its game. Seize control of your financial future now. Contact Tax Network USA for immediate relief and expert guidance. Call 1-800-245-6000 or visit tnusa.com/Dave. Don't let tax issues overpower you. Turn to Tax Network USA and find your path to financial peace of mind. Okay, so let's connect all of this, whether we're talking about UFC fighters pushing back on woke nonsense and just saying enough is enough, and thousands of people chanting F Trudeau, who has pushed so much of this on decent Canadian citizens, or whether we're talking about a decent woman like Tiffany Justice with Moms for Liberty, who just wants her children to be taught age-appropriate things, which we all knew were right 20 years ago, pushing back against a woke leftist lunatic like Joy Reid. What that has all done has that issue, the people that are just like, enough is enough, that thing is the thing that has brought Trump back. That is just true. You might have been a DeSantis guy, you might have been this or that or the other thing, but what it is doing, it is taking all of these people. I don't think if you took someone like Tiffany Justice, mild-mannered mom who just wanted to know what her kids were learning, and you connected her with Joe Rogan and Strickland and Dana White, and then you looked at, boy, these people are all going to end up voting for the same person. Why would that be? It's a little bit bizarre, right? But it's not that bizarre, because when people get pushed into a corner, eventually they do push back. It is built into the human system. So now I want to connect this to what we were talking about last week, which is the World Economic Forum. JPMorgan CEO Jamie Dimon was there, and Dimon, I thought, quite well explained why Trump is back and why people support the guy.
I wish the Democrats would think a little more carefully when they talk about MAGA. When people say MAGA, they're actually looking at people voting for Trump, and they think they're voting, and they're basically scapegoating them, that you are like him. But I don't think they're voting for Trump because of his family values. Now, if you look, just take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. Mm-hmm. He grew the economy quite well.
China virus.
Tax reform worked. Yeah. He was right about some of China. I don't like what he did.
No, I said China virus.
Yeah, I understand. He may have been right. And I don't like how he said things about Mexico. I don't like, but he wasn't wrong about some of these critical issues. And that's why they're voting for him. And I think people should be a little more respectful of our fellow citizens. And when you guys have people up here, you should always ask the why. Not like it's a binary thing. You're supporting Trump, you're not supporting Trump. Why are you supporting Trump?
It's hard to hate 75 million of your fellow Americans. And
I agree.
It's done criminal.
And, the Democrats have done a pretty good job with the deplorables, hugging onto their Bibles and their beer and their guns. I mean, really, could we just stop that stuff and actually grow up and treat other people with respect and listen to them a little bit? And I do think the economy will affect. And I think this negative talk about MAGA is going to hurt Biden's election campaign.
Yeah, that's just right. That's just right. Because what's Jamie Dimon doing there? He's defending just the average American, just a mom who wants to know what her kid is learning, right? Just a person who works at a company and doesn't want to be discriminated against because they happen to be straight and white. But all of these people have pushed so far that they have actually summoned Donald Trump from the gates of hell once again. So this is the last time, I promise you, this is the last time I'm going to do it on this show for the next year. I thought that there was a different way we could go, let's say in the Republican Party, to fix this. I thought there was a younger version that made more sense. But I fully got what was going on here. It was also exactly why I voted for Donald Trump in the first place. I, by no estimation, am the typical Trump supporter or Republican or anything else, but he absolutely will have my support gladly. He will gladly have my support in the face of what we are going against right now. And more people are understanding that. I want to show you a clip. This is from a couple years back, actually. You'll note that because Charlie Rose is no longer on television. He had his own little sex scandal. But this is on the Charlie Rose show. Legendary author and original feminist Camille Paglia talking about what the average American wants out of our education system. Now, this is literally from like 20 years ago or so. But listen to what she talks about versus what Joy Reid and the rest of these woke lunatics are constantly pushing on us.
Enlightened multiculturalism.
Okay, I'm totally opposed to any politicized agenda in the classroom, okay? I do not want this crappy melodrama being taught to our students that Western civilization is filled with evil patriarchs and out there are the wonderful people of color, okay?
Well, but I don't think anyone that I know of that believes that just think of what you just said.
The new historicists, listen, you don't know, Stephen Greenblatt, the new historicists, okay, I mean, my God, every word out of their mouth is about the evil of Western culture. You don't know how bad
Western
it is.
culture is evil,
yeah,
and all
you don't know how bad
Asian
it is.
or African culture is unflawed.
These people in the who have control of the university's humanities departments now do not believe in great art. Okay.
You know, it's funny. We didn't speed that up. I know she's talking like this. Blah, blah, blah. We didn't speed that up. But talk about somebody being right so long ago. That might even be 30 years ago. We'll try to get can we try to get the exact date on that? But the point is, people have known that the institutions were infected. She was way ahead of the curve on it. If you think I've been a little ahead of the curve on what was going on with the woke, or Jordan Peterson has, or Ben Shapiro, it's like there's somebody that was in it right? And she was calling it out. And Charlie Rose trying to be sort of the good liberal. Listen to what you just said. That sounds mean or something like that. But all she's saying, in essence, is the thing that, again, we all knew, which is the reverse of what the woke want, which is get politics. Get your social agenda out of schools. When I was growing up, and I went to all public schools, and I also went to a public college, but when I went to school, you learned math. You learned science. You didn't learn that boys were girls and the rest of the nonsense. And you didn't know if your teacher was gay or straight or anything else. And they didn't have a flag on their desk that said this or that. They taught you things and then you went home. You didn't even realize that they were real people. I remember once I saw my gym teacher and the art teacher, Mr. Myers and Miss Anderson. I saw them at Macy's on the escalator. This has got to be around 1986. I was probably about 10 years old. And I thought it was the craziest thing ever. How could the gym teacher be with the art teacher at a store? I guess they were just shopping. I don't know. That was in 1992, 32 years ago that she said that. Man, is my coffee working today or what? Anyway, let's connect this to everything else, because once they break your child's brain with all of those things, then eventually generations of those people get out into society, and then generations of people start taking over our institutions, and then nothing works. You know what's one of those things that's not working right now? It's our border. Our border is not working. A border is a thing. It's supposed to be a literal physical thing, like a wall, let's say, but at the very least, it's something that's written on a map that delineates between countries. Let's say between the Mexico and the United States and Canada and the United States. Well, right now we know that because of the Democrat policies that have been instilled, well, certainly in these last couple of years under the Biden administration, we are under an invasion. We are under an absolute invasion. I was in New York City over the weekend. I was doing that Gutfeld thing that we showed you at the top of the show. But I want to show you this on what's going on. This is not from me, but this was happening this weekend in New York City. Migrants have just taken over the city. All right, that video goes on and on and on. I don't think we have to belabor the point, but what I want to connect this to is what Jamie Dimon said, that when you demonize all of these people, you're going to start creating a problem. So it does not make you a bigot to not want your third grader to learn about anal rape in school by some activist. And it doesn't make you a racist to wonder, why are all these people wandering through New York City, and what do they think, and what are their intentions, and why are they here, right? And having been in New York City this past weekend, a city that I loved and adored, that I lived in for about 15 years as an adult, when all my good old days stories are from New York, when I didn't have a freaking 2 dimes to rub together, and I stood out on street corners with a dream that miraculously came true, and you're watching it right now. And I lived through 9/11 in New York City and all of those things. It was once the greatest place in the world. New York City was the place that everyone everywhere wanted to come to. The streets were lined with gold, right? Like that was the idea. Here's New York City in 1945. You know, I love these throwback videos. I just love those videos. We could have shown you a lot more of that. You can find those videos online. They're just wonderful to see because the streets are clean, the cars are nice, the people are well dressed. It doesn't mean everything was perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than what's going on there right now, where New York City, every single corner smells like a combination of weed and urine. Every single corner. There are no business people left. It is just an abject nightmare. So the problem is, and the point of all of it is that normal Americans just want a normal America back. And most of us are actually normal. Within whatever the parameters of something kind of roughly normal are, that's how most of us are. But the activist lunatics over here have just driven us all together. And that doesn't mean there aren't activist lunatics on the right, but that is not the major problem at the moment. So what else happens? What else happens when you teach everyone all the wrong things, when you have no borders, you have no laws, you're allowed to steal stuff, urban decay, all of that? Then you start actually importing people who want to kill you, literally kill you. This is the most chilling video you are going to see all month, I guarantee you. This video, which was taken over the weekend, it's a Middle Eastern illegal immigrant, and wait till you hear what he says. It's just absolutely incredible. This should be the lead story on every news program tonight, because there should be a national manhunt for this guy, and you are not going to see this on mainstream media anywhere. Take a look.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're going to know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
The entitlement, guys. Wow.
Okay, so there you have an illegal immigrant. The accent would lead you to believe from the Middle East. There's some issues in the Middle East at the moment. And there he is saying, if you were smart enough, you would know who I am. You will all know who I am. Do you guys remember 9/11? Do you remember 10/7? Like, if that guy does something, that is on Joe Biden, and that is on Mayorkas, and it is on the Democrats. But that video, like, here's a guy saying, you will all know who I am. Why? Are you inventing a great widget that we're all going to buy? Probably not. Right? Like, what? But guys, it's not just our borders, it's our airports. We are letting these people in, and then we're letting them fly all over the place. You may have seen this. This is a tweet from me, from a picture that I took as I was en route on Thursday. I was en route from Miami, going to New York to do Gutfeld, and I saw this. I was on the pre-TSA line, and I saw the image that you see there. I wrote this. This is the state of absolute insanity happening at our airports. I'm in the pre-TSA line, where migrants don't have to have an ID to get through security, and it's their choice whether they want their picture taken. There is a plan to destroy America. This was retweeted a gajillion times. Senators were retweeting it. It was covered on most Fox shows. Can we throw back to it for just a sec? Because I just want to show. So if you are a non-citizen, now I'm in the pre-TSA line. So the pre-TSA line, you've already pre-screened to be in that line. So why this sign was there, I don't know. But if you're an illegal, notify the TSA officer that you're a migrant. The TSA officer will take a photo, but that's optional. 3, if requested, maybe it won't be, provide your alien documentation number for autobiographic information. I've never even heard of that word. And then follow the officer instructions. And then repeatedly, it says that it's your choice whether you want your picture taken. So we have laws and regulations for us, the nonsensical ridiculousness that goes on at TSA, where they rub you down and they touch you while they're smiling at you in a weird way. But if you're a migrant, well, you want your picture taken or not? Come on, you want a new headshot? What do you need? What do you need? It is absolutely insane. It's insane, but it should be expected because we've all seen all of this coming. Now I want to show you a video. This guy is we don't really have a Democrat Party here in Florida anymore. We have completely demolished the Democrat Party. As you know, DeSantis won by 20 points. There is no functioning Democrat Party here, but we do still have a couple Democrat Congress people here in Florida. This is a guy by the name of Max Frost. He's up in Orlando, which is one of the last bluish areas in all of Florida. This is the very same guy. You may remember this when I did my show in Orlando with Governor DeSantis last year during my book tour. This is a guy who bum rushed the stage and then took video of it and put it in his campaign ad to become congressman. Okay, so this guy, he has no problem infringing on other people's free speech. But here he is in Congress lecturing us on Republicans being mean about immigration and what we should do about it.
To my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, let's be honest with immigrants who deserve better than what you're offering them. Don't welcome immigrants if you plan to reject them. If you keep pushing your bigoted H.R. 2 bill, then also pass this bill. I've taken the liberty of drafting it for you. It removes the Statue of Liberty, our largest symbol that tells people to come here. This is who you are, removing the fabric of America. So I want to know which Republican who supports and voted for H.R. 2 will introduce this bill.
Oh, shut the fuck up. These people, that's the attitude. That's the attitude that you mean. I try not to say the F word. My mom watches the show and she's always telling me, Dave, control the F words. She calls me David. David, control the F bombs. But enough of these people. That's the attitude that Strickland has. That's the attitude that Camille Paglia had 30 years ago. That's the attitude that Tiffany Justice was having towards Joy Reid. Enough. It's the attitude that Donald Trump has to the whole damn system. And that is exactly why Donald Trump is back. He's back, baby, right? He is. And we all know why now. Yes, Republicans are so mean that we should take down the Statue of Liberty. You are supposed to have legal immigration. We have no duty to give anyone anything. Nothing, none, zippo, zilch. So let's bring this thing full circle. What is the motive? What do you think the actual motive for this policy is for this policy that's killing America? What is actually happening here? Well, it's woke multiculturalism, and it is here to destroy everything. That, by the way, is James Lindsay's point when he says these people will kill you. They are here to destroy America. Don't believe me? Check this out. This is the director of the American Military Project. His name is Will Thibault. He is what appears to be a straight white guy, but here he is telling Congress that diversity, equity, and inclusion are deeply, deeply important.
Diversity is an ideology that exists in our social mores as something that the military must embrace as a point of fact, as a principle, as opposed to just a byproduct of selecting the best people for the job. It's as if the armed forces march to the beat of a corporate or university drum. In reality, though, the existence of a professional, permanent, standing military demands that the institution exist apart from ideologies and politics prevalent in modern-day America, regardless of their political affiliation.
Wait, is he pushing for diversity, equity, and inclusion? He is pushing for it, right? It got a little screwy there at the end. It sort of sounded like, no, maybe he was backtracking, but no. These are the people that have now, we know this is in our military, right? Like how many trans people are running our rocket ships? Like it's absolutely everywhere. And by the way, guys, it's global now. It is global, and it is being pushed again by that World Economic Forum, the elites who don't really like the fact that you get to decide what you eat. What? You're eating steak? We're the only ones that's supposed to eat steak. What? You're flying on a plane? We're the ones that are supposed to be on private planes. So now let's go back to the World Economic Forum last week in Davos, Switzerland. Here is Alex Soros. He is the son of megalomaniac, psychotic lunatic George Soros, who has pushed so much of this anti-Western stuff on our free independent nations. He is also running most of George Soros's operations at this point because George is up there in years. Here he is giving a speech about the amount of people who will vote in this upcoming year across the globe. He appears to be drugged and confused, but this is now the guy that is sort of replacing his dad. Take a listen.
I don't think that that's the fundamental. I don't think technology is the fundamental issue in democracy. Democracy is messy. I mean, democracy is about contestation of ideas. It's about plurality. It's about people having different truths, actually. Now, if we play too much on this disinformation card, we're taking the responsibility away from ourselves to actually create a narrative that inspires people to vote and to believe in democracy and democratic institutions. And on the institutional part, I think that we can talk about institutions as these abstract things, but institutions are also about people. And we just heard this point about untrustworthy people, and we talked about things in the United States like checks and balances, which aren't written anywhere but are customs. And one man, Donald Trump, literally came in and just took that all away. But when I see this, I think that we really have to be careful here in this nostalgia for a time past, because a lot of the reactions we're seeing in society are actually reactions to positive things like equality for women, and greater diversity, which come with backlash.
Program breaking down. The drugs here. Blah, 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 blah. In essence, what he is saying is that Donald Trump somehow is the enemy of what they are really trying to do. They want you to believe in democracy as long as it's their version of democracy. So what he's very concerned about, right now is that 4.2 billion people worldwide are going to vote in elections this year. And especially the American election is, of course, the most important one. And he's basically saying, we better get these people to vote the way we want them to vote. Otherwise, we'll end up with that Donald Trump guy again. And you know what happens if you end up with that Donald Trump guy? That's the signal to the rest of the world that they have some autonomy over their borders, that they have some autonomy over their values and their culture and everything else. And that would be the worst thing possible if you were a globalist, if you were someone who just thought, oh, there's one way to look at the world. And if we could just basically install people in different countries who didn't really believe in the founding documents of their own countries, but believed in our globalist vision, then things would be good. So someone like Justin Trudeau, remember F. Justin Trudeau, that's where we started, he's a perfect World Economic Forum puppet. He doesn't stand up for anything that's remotely close to a Canadian value. He stands up for globalist values. But the problem is the WEF gets their hooks into all of these political leaders. This is a picture of the Polish foreign minister, Radek Sikorski, and he held a private meeting with that with Alex Soros at the World Economic Forum, and the N Wokeness account, they wrote RIP Poland. It was fun while it lasted. Why do these people get involved in all of our governments? What right does George Soros or Alex Soros have to influence the leaders of these countries to take away the rights of their people, right? And by the way, these are also, many of the bad people come from America itself. Here's Bill Gates, and guess what? More vaccines, more consumption, more control. He's planning it.
We make sure that for all these vaccines, that there's enough capacity, that there's competition so the prices keep going down. And we will have new vaccines. We'll have a TB vaccine, malaria vaccine, HIV vaccine, and even the things like COVID vaccines. We need to make them have longer duration, more coverage, and we're going to change, instead of using a needle, to use a little patch. So the pandemic really highlighted that we've been underinvested in those innovations, and our partners in India are part of how we're going to get these breakthrough products done.
God, the way he smiles when he's looking and talking about all of these things. We don't want your vaccines. You're the ones that are coming up with all the diseases in the first place. You, during lockdowns, were able to live at any of your multitude, dozen or so houses. Your people still worked for you. You people are disgusting and gross. We want nothing to do with you. We don't like you. Okay, that's what I want to say. I also want to say that, Bill Gates, of course, became famous for and became a billionaire because he created Microsoft Windows. Remember back in the day, PCs were just like C prompt, this, that, that, and then he gave us sort of the visual interpretation. That was Windows, and we had Paint and all that other stuff. But Windows, of course, and Microsoft, the thing that took out Windows basically and most Microsoft programs, which then led to the rise of Apple, was they were infected by viruses. Do you remember that? So he creates this operating system, and then you'd go on your computer to just go to a website, and then a zillion other pop-ups. We got to play one of those next time we show a Bill Gates clip. A zillion other pop-ups, and you'd have to get virus software and pay for that virus, and then there'd be a new virus, and you get ready to patch it. He's just taken what he created, that virus-laden bullshit that they created digitally, and now they've put it into the real world with all of this nonsense. But what's a good way of pushing back against these people? How about it's living a healthy life? How about it's not believing everything they say? There is a guy who's doing that. This is a throwback clip, but then we're going to get you to one from this past weekend. Remember the best tennis player of all time, Novak Djokovic, when he shut down a reporter over his decision not to get the COVID jab? It's worth noting in the face of that Bill Gates nonsense. Let's throw back to that one.
I understand the consequences of my decision. And one of the consequences of my decision was not going to Australia, and I was prepared not to go. And I understand that not being vaccinated today, I'm unable to travel to most of the tournaments at the moment.
And that's a price you're willing to pay?
That is the price that I'm willing to pay.
Ultimately, are you prepared to forego the chance to be the greatest player that ever picked up a racket, statistically, because you feel so strongly about this jab?
Yes. I do.
But as things stand, if this means that you miss the French Open, is that a price you'd be willing to pay?
Yes, that is the price that I'm willing to pay.
And if it means that you miss Wimbledon this year, again, that's a price you're willing to pay?
Yes.
Novak? Why? Why?
Because the principles of decision making on my body are more important than any title or anything else. I'm trying to be in tune with my body.
Isn't that so great when you have the truth? Why won't you get that injection? Why won't you show up? It's my body. I'm going to do what I think is right. Now, the reason I'm showing you that is because this past weekend, Novak Djokovic was at the Aussie Open, and listen to this. There's a man, you're going to hear it, screaming, "Get vaccinated," while he's about to serve. You might enjoy this one.
4 match points.
Please.
How absolutely great is that? Like, how great is that? Get vaccinated. The crowd's not with that guy anymore. The crowd loves Novak Djokovic now, and then just freaking blows it by. Just absolute straight up, just blows it by the opponent. That's what it's all about. Standing up for what you believe in, doing what you think is right, living in a way that is congruent with what your brain knows and what we've known for years and years and years, as opposed to being the bitch to these people who would gladly jail you. You tell the truth, like Camille Paglia was talking about 30 years ago. Here's a little clip from that again.
Enlightened multiculturalism.
Okay, I'm totally opposed to any politicized agenda in the classroom, okay? I do not want this crappy melodrama being taught to our students that Western civilization is filled with evil patriarchs and out there are the wonderful people of color, okay?
Well, but I don't think anyone that I know.
So there's Camille Paglia doing it 30 years ago, telling the truth that now we're all seeing, so we're getting the pushback on. And then other people are waking up, guys like Sean Strickland, who really just wanted to beat the crap out of other people for a living, but instead he has to beat the crap out of woke Canadian reporters.
But I did want to ask also things you said about the trans community. You said this past October when they announced the Bud Light sponsorship that you'd go so hard on Bud Light in your next fight, they'll have to accept me or denounce me when they know what, and will know what they stand for.
This guy's like, hey, this Canadian's not that Canadian.
Are you still going to use your fight time to kind of speak on that?
Here's the thing about Bud Light. 10 years ago, to be trans was a mental illness. And now all of a sudden, people like you have weaseled your way into the world. You are an infection. You are the definition of weakness. Everything that is wrong with the world is because of you. And the best thing is the world's not buying it. The world's not buying your bull you're peddling. The world is not saying, you know what, you're right. Chicks have dicks. The world's not saying that.
What the world's not saying. What is the point of all of this, guys? Well, as I said at the top of the show, it is always worth fighting the good fight. It does not mean you will win every battle. You will not win every political battle. You will not win every battle in your home or in your community, but it is always worth fighting for truth. It is always worth being brave, marching forward and never quitting when you know you are doing the right thing. And it doesn't mean you're going to be president at the end either. Here's Ron DeSantis checking out of the election.
Greetings from Florida. The warmth of being home is a reminder why I've chosen public service. From joining the United States Navy and serving in Iraq, to representing the people in the U.S. Congress, and now serving as governor of Florida. And it reminds me why I decided to run for president, to fight for those who have been forgotten in this country. This is America's time for choosing. We can choose to allow a border invasion, or we can choose to stop it. We can choose reckless borrowing and spending, or we can choose to limit government and lower inflation. We can choose political indoctrination, or we can choose classical education. These choices are symptoms of the underlying struggle to ensure that constitutional government can endure and that Western civilization can survive. And we launched this campaign to bring accountability to government, regain sovereignty at our border, and restore sanity to our society. We cannot succeed as a country if we allow our nation to be invaded, our currency to be debased, our cities to crumble, and our kids to be indoctrinated. The DC elites who facilitated this mess do not care about you, and they do not work for you. They work for themselves. They seek to accumulate power at your expense to pursue an agenda that is harmful to the American people. Citizens do not serve politicians. It is the duty of politicians to serve you. Talk is cheap. Actions speak louder than words. Reversing the decline of this nation requires leadership that delivers big results for the people we are elected to serve. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents. The days of putting Americans last, of kowtowing to large corporations, of caving to woke ideology are over. Winston Churchill once remarked that success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. While this campaign has ended, the mission continues. Down here in Florida, we will continue to show the country how to lead. Thank you, and God bless.
That's the point, guys. You will not always win. I will not always win. We will not always win, right? But you have a chance to be a Sean Strickland and push back. You have a chance to be a Tiffany Justice and push back. You have a chance to be way ahead of the curve and be Camille Paglia and push back. You have a chance to be the guy who's fought the woke better than anybody in the last 5 years, like Ron DeSantis, and push back. You have a chance to be a guy like Javier Milei in Argentina and go to the World Economic Forum and tell them that they can go F themselves. Or you have a chance to be like Donald Trump and be the guy that's going to push back in a way that they actually cannot fathom. Or they can chop your genitals off. The choice is yours. Happy Monday. Bye.
I am black. I am gay. I am disabled. I am a woman seeking to control her health and her choices.